Hello and a really big warm welcome to this presentation from the Urban Penguin. My name is Andrew Mallett, and in today's presentation we're going to take a look at joining an Ubuntu 20.04 system to an existing Active Directory domain running on a Windows 2022 server. Come on, let's find that command line. And here we are, look at this, on our command line of our Ubuntu system. If we go through and just run our hostname ctl command, we can then go through and see that we've got our hostname, it's Ubuntu 1, and then we've got our operating system, so we can see that we're Ubuntu 20.04 and the .6 sub-release. When we look at our hostname though, we haven't got a full hostname set, so I'm going to use sudo -I to gain administrative privileges. I can use Control and L to move to the top of the screen. We're going to be running a lot of things as root, hence I've just got my interactive shell running now as root. When we run our host name ctl again, we can then go through and do our set host name, and we can go through then and put it to ubuntu 1.example.com. My DNS is running at example.com, so I'm just putting the full DNS name in of my system. We can go back now and look at our hostname ctl command. When I go through and just clear all of this out, as we take a look at it, we can see now that we've got our full hostname. We should also check time synchronization. So if I go through and run the time date ctl command, now with this, we can see then what we have configured. And when I look at my NTP service, it's inactive. So I just want to make sure that that's running in an active state. So I can go through user time date CTL, and then we can run set -NTP and set this to true. As we go back and look at time date CTL, we can see now that the NTP service is active. The next thing that we need to take a look at is where we're resolving DNS from. So if I go through and just take a look at system d-resolve --status, we should see, as I then space down, I've got two network cards. On link 3, I've not got DNS set up, but we can see on link 2, we are resolving then from 10.0.2.3. Now, I want to be able to resolve from the Active Directory DNS server, so I'm going to go through and change this configuration. So we can edit our /etc and netplan. And I've got a couple of configuration files. It's the first one that configures, when I go through and take a look at it, the cloud one that configures the DHCP interface. And that's where we're picking up our DNS from. So as we then go through and edit this, I'm just going to change a setting. We're going to add in DHCP 4. And we can go through and put our -overrides. Just want to make sure that I'm pushed in 4 spaces inside of this. And we can then go through and put use DNS and make sure that we configure it to have used DNS and no. So use DNS and then no or false. You can see where I put no, it doesn't pick it up as a Boolean. It does work. You could be a little bit more accurate by putting in the value of false. Either will work, but we can see then that we're picking out our syntax highlighting of that then being a correct Boolean value. As we then go back, we can go through and add in then our DNS setting. We can go through and put our name servers. And just want to make sure this has got the right amount of spaces. So I'm just moving back for the default seems to be just using my 8 spaces. So I'm just moving back now to line it up with the used DNS. And we're going to have then addresses and colon. And this would be a list, so we can use then our square brackets, 192.168.56. and then 254. Now I can put multiple values in there, just comma separate them inside of the square brackets. So if you've got multiple DNS servers, then just add in all of the DNS servers that are hosting your information for your Active Directory domain. And once we've got that in there, we can go through and save our changes, and we can run net plan and apply to apply those changes. Now, as I go back and then just take a look at my systemd resolve, move down, you can see there that we're pointing to the DNS server 192.168.56.254. So that now starts looking pretty good to be able to move on. So we're getting the plumbing sorted. So we've configured our full host name, we've configured our time synchronization, and we've set up DNS. We're now just going to go through and clear the screen, so I can use Control and L, and we can run our apt update just to make sure that our software cache is up to date with the latest packages. And then we can run our apt install, and let's run -y, so it just goes ahead and does it. And we want the SSSD-AD, we want the Active Directory components of SSSD. We want our tools for SSSD, so we can add those in. We want our realmd and ADCLI. So these are just command line utilities that we can use to join our domain and even to manage our Active Directory domain once we are up and running. With this then, I'm going to go through and just allow this to run through and install. Once we have got it installed, we should then be able to go through and discover through DNS our Active Directory domain. So we're going to use our realm coming from our Kerberos realms. We can put on verbose information if we want. And as we go through, we can use the discover and then example.com, the name of your Active Directory. So as we see then that we can then find our lookup on the 192.168.56.254 interface. Obviously it can't find it on the second interface. We've discovered example.com. The realm name we can see then is in uppercase, and that's important to remember. But also we can see then that it's configured no, so we're not part of this realm. We can then configure Kerberos. To be able to be part of the realm, we need a very basic Kerberos configuration. So I'm just going to copy this across. If I clear my screen, and then if I just paste the command in, we can see that I'm writing to my Kerberos configuration. We write until we get to the end of file. We're adding in then a header block of libdefaults, setting our default realm, and then just saying we're not using reverse DNS, so I can paste this in. So we can see the command at the command line. That's going to create my file. We can double check it. If I go through then and cat out my Kerberos 5 configuration, we can see then it's just a simple way of getting that information into the file. With a file created, we can then run our realm join. We can add on the verbose switch. With all of this, we don't need the verbose switch, but at least it gives you much more information. And then we can go through and using uppercase, we can put example.com, the way the realm showed when we were looking at the discovery. We now got to authenticate. we didn't specify the -u. We could specify -u to specify the user account to use, but by default, it's going to be using the administrator account. So I'm just adding in the password for my administrator account, but now we are in the realm. If I go back and look at my Discover now, you can see then that we are configured as a Kerberos member of this domain. Now, you may well be guessing by now that we are pretty far down the track, and you are almost there. We just need to make a configuration through to the SSSD file. So we're going to go through and open up etc, SSSD, and the sssd.conf. Now, whilst this is mainly complete, we can see then the SSSD configuration where we mention the domains that we work with. We then configure our domain, and it's got pretty much everything that we do need for our domain, but we might have to put in some customization. I'm going to need to put in one just in the way that my virtual machines are working. I use VirtualBox, and the resolution then of the host name can cause me a little bit of a problem when I try and connect to a domain controller. So I can explicitly put the name of the AD controller into my SSSD configuration. So let me insert a new line, and I'm going to put the configuration option in AD_server, and I'm going to put the host name of my Active Directory server. So we can go through then, add in the equal sign, and then go through and I'm going to paste in my Windows server. I just left it at the default name, so it's got a horrendously difficult name, but there you go. Now, I know I should be able to resolve that through DNS, but it's just because we share a similar interface between the Ubuntu system and the Windows system. You'll see here when I go through and ping my Windows system in example.com, it comes back with ubuntu1.example.com because we share the same interface. This is just the networking that is used on VirtualBox. But I have got a separate interface that we can use to communicate between the two. So if I hard code that inside of my etc and a host file, it becomes an easy way to be able to resolve this relatively simple issue. So I'm going to go into my host file, and within my host file, just put our host entry for the Win system. So I can use uppercase G to move to the end of the file, lowercase o to insert a new line, add in the IP address of the host-only networking adapter, so the 254 address, and then go through and add in the host name. So this becomes, as I say, just a simple way to overcome the issue. Now, we have to remember at this stage, though, we have made changes to our SSSD configuration. If we've made changes to the configuration file, we're going to need to restart the service. So let's not forget to do that. So system, CTL, restart, and SSSD. And there we go. We should be pretty much up and running with most of our configuration. We can go through and run our ADCLI and info. We can see, though, that it prompts me that I must also specify the domain. So this is the domain, not the realm we're looking at now, so we can use lowercase. And you can see then that we've got the NetBIOS name, we've got the fully qualified name, and we can see then the domain controllers that represent this system. Now, I've only got the one domain controller, so it's both the domain controller that I'm connected to, as well as appearing in the list of domain controllers. The last configuration that we will do will just ensure that when we log on to our system as an Active Directory account, we will create a local home directory. This is required because I'm not sharing out any home directories, so we can create a home directory when we log on. We can update the PAM configuration with PAM auth update, --enable, and then mug home dir. That just writes through to my PAM configuration files, but saves me having to edit the configuration files myself. So it's a nice, simple touch to get to know. But with that done and dusted, we should be able to perhaps first go through and search for our users. So get ent passwd, get the entire password database, and search for fred@example.com. This is one of my domain accounts, and we can see the information coming back. With this done, let's exit out back to my ordinary user account and then switch through to fred@example.com, and we should then be able to see that Fred is up and running. And as I put in the password, as long as I can remember what the password is, we can see we've created our home directory and we're now logged in as the Fred user. Checking the ID command, we can see the user IDs that are being used for that, and we belong to our domain users group. So we're good, we are up and running, and it looks like everything is going well with my membership of the Active Directory domain.
All that is left to say is thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this, then you are probably sadder than I first thought. For more of this drivel, please subscribe, like and comment to @TheUrbanPenguin.